Welcome to episode 242. Thank you, a comparison framework, and 3 things life will deal you for sure. Welcome to the Be That 1% podcast. I'm your host, James Silvis, mindset specialist and performance coach. And here on the show, I'm going to challenge you to think deeper, commit to greatness, and develop a stronger mindset. You'll hear stories from those who are living life on their terms, and you'll receive strategies that will help you level up. So the question is, are you ready to be your own 1%? Let's get started. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Be That 1% podcast. If this is your first time, welcome. If this is your return visit, then welcome home to the 1% community. I'm your host, James Silvis, mindset specialist, and today this episode is going to be, first of all, centered around gratitude. There's a lot to be grateful for. At the end of the year, it's always kind of a reflection time for most people, but especially for me, with Thanksgiving, whether you celebrate that or not, just at the end of the year, it's a time to look back at what you've been able to accomplish, not just maybe this year, but maybe piecing things together for the last couple of years. And November and December is that time frame for me. A lot has changed this year for myself. Business has been growing and my family has been growing. Amanda and I just welcomed our second son to the planet, and his name is Oakley, and that has been very enlightening, going from one child to two. You know, they're hard for different reasons, and it's been all beautiful and so many lessons being learned. Sleep is definitely being challenged. Amanda and I are both being stretched and like, whoa. How do we manage all this, right? Like going from one child to, or 0 to 1 is a big lifestyle change, right? You have to get all the baby stuff. You have to baby proof the house. You have to, for me, I was interviewing other parents, like, what's worked, what really helped you guys, and getting feedback that way. And then you have that psychological switch of like, now I'm responsible for a human being, right? And then going from 1 to 2, you kind of already can anticipate what the milestones are. You already have majority of everything that you need just from baby number 1. A lot of hand-me-down stuff. You have all the equipment and the tech. So you it's easier in that respect. But the hardest part is the time management. Whereas with 1, you have 2 against 1. Now it's man-to-man defense. Now there's really no breaks. If Amanda needs help with sleep, I have to now take over. Whereas before we can kind of take turns. Now we're both on all the time, which means that our energy and our time needs to be much more efficient. And that's been a big thing that I've realized, to the point where I need to get up at 5 o'clock if I even want to get a workout in. Like it's just, that's the truth. If I wait to the end of the day, I'm either too tired or I want to spend time with my family. I'm not willing to compensate that for exercise. Yeah, maybe I can work out with my kids, but as they get older, that might be a little bit easier. But for right now, like to have my own individualized time with me, I need to get up earlier. And so that's been an adjustment. It's one that I actually like more so now. Getting up earlier allows me to have more hours in the day. So that's been a new kind of thing for me. And not that I've gotten up late in the past, but 5 o'clock consistently is definitely new. So leaning into that, learning those things, but back to the gratitude piece, I'm very grateful for you listening, for this community, because this year I got some pretty incredible news regarding the podcast. Maybe some of you may have heard this from previous episodes, but the 1% podcast is 1% ranked globally in podcasts, meaning that this podcast is top 30,000 in the world out of 3 million podcasts. And not only is that on brand, Be That 1% is the 1% in podcasts, but it's truly rewarding and fulfilling. That was never my intention, building this. It was just showing up and doing the work and listening to you all on what content resonated, and just to be consistent and keep putting content out. And yes, it has been, there have been weeks where episodes have not been released. And so, but overall, the continuation of content producing has been there. And I thank you for tuning in, for sharing, for DMing, for emailing, what resonates, what you're loving, and what to bring more of. So thank you. And I ask that you keep doing that. And for those of you who haven't gotten to the content that you've asked me to produce, just know that it's in the queue, it's on the list, and I will get to it as soon as I can. So thank you for being here. You are the 1% family, and let's just continue to grow, learn, serve, and bring value to the spaces that we enter. That's the gift that we can give ourselves and others. This episode is going to be a bit different in that there's not really too much of a structure. There's the gratitude piece that I wanted to emphasize and say. And now there are two kind of frameworks that I've been thinking about recently that I wanted to share with you. One is regarding comparison, and the other is regarding something I learned in a documentary that I watched, which I'll explain, all centered around kind of the three things that life deals us, that if we get better at that, we have a more fulfilling life. And those have been pretty active in my mind as of recently, both from a reflection standpoint and also from what's coming up in some of the sessions that I've been having with my one-on-ones and in my workshops that I lead. So let's start with the comparison. In times of now, it is easy to fall into this comparison trap, right? And I don't know that you can forever get rid of comparison, and I don't even know if we would want to do that. I just think we need to get better at intelligently comparing. It's a natural tendency to want to contrast what you're doing with what someone else is doing. And in a lot of ways, that can produce creativity, innovation, creative flair. There's things that we need to see that we're not doing so that we can see what's possible. On the same token, though, on the flip side, we can also get in our heads and say, oh, I can never be like that or never do it like that. And that can be a tool that we use to beat ourselves up and remind ourselves of our unworthiness or our lack of ability to live the life that we've imagined. And if we want to live life on our terms, which is a big part of what this podcast is, then we have to take control of the narrative that's happening in these moments. And as I've continued to reflect on where I compare and where I get stuck, and also what I've noticed my clients get stuck on in regards to comparison, three things pop out to me very clearly. And so I wanted to kind of work through those and share kind of like my thought process on how to compare effectively. And then in hopes that you can use this too and with whatever aligns for you. So 3 ways that we compare, in my opinion. One is speed. When we compare, comparing speed is looking at someone who, let's say, may be younger, who has reached a certain financial milestone, or their business is at a certain level, or they've got the promotion a lot quicker, a lot faster than you. And that can produce, like we talked about, some insecurity, some frustration, some doubt, some bitterness, some jealousy, some hatred, or it can produce some inspiration, some motivation, and even more discipline, right? Again, it just depends on how we view these things. I was sitting in a workshop with a UNLV professor, I forget by the name of drawing a blank on his name right now. But one of the things that he said is that there's 3 ways to compare. You can compare up, right? You can compare you to someone that's further along in their journey to you. That's comparing up, which is what most people do. You can compare laterally, comparing to someone in your own space, at your own age, at your own kind of skill level. And then you can compare down. And most people hardly ever compare down, which is helpful because you're comparing yourself to either where you used to be or where someone else used to be where you're at. And so you see the growth that you've had, which can be reinforcing to keep going on the journey. Whereas if you're constantly comparing up, you're going to be in the gap. They're going to be in what most people would say a lack. And that lack can produce motivation, but if you stay in that lack long term and you're always focusing on what you don't have, then that can also produce an identity that's centered around lack rather than centered around continuous growth and playing your own game. So we got to be careful there on what we're paying attention to. But with regards to speed, this is a common way that we can compare. Oh, I didn't do it that fast, or how come I didn't do it that fast? And we want to make sure that we're going at our own speed that makes sense for us. Someone else's speed might be perfect for their lifestyle, for their personality. And for you, for me, I'm more of an intentional builder, brick by brick. Some people are groups of bricks at a time, and it just, you got to know yourself. You got to have that level of self-awareness. And so being mindful on where you're comparing with speed will give you more insight as to where you may need to shift that narrative or what you need to express and get out of you so that you're not bottling it in and allowing that self-story, that disempowering story, wreak havoc in your life and destroy your momentum. The second way that we compare is by style. Maybe we see someone do something in a certain way. They have a certain level of confidence, or they feel very comfortable in what they're doing in their process. And so there's a lot of confidence that just emanates from them. And we may want that. And so we copy it because we want to be seen like that. I know for me personally, when I began my coaching and speaking career, it was mostly because I was inspired by Les Brown and Tony Robbins. And so because I was inspired by them, I copied them. And because and it worked for the first part of my career. And I think that there's stages of finding your own style. Maybe you start with a copying because you're new to the industry, you're new to the space, and you want to find what works, and success leaves clues. And so naturally you maybe copy. But over time, as you self-reflect, as you gain more self-awareness, you can then start saying, well, this is more me. This aligns more with my values. This is what lights my soul on fire. And slowly but surely, you start carving out your own style of doing things. You start finding your own lane. You start shooting your shot. And that's where you begin to win, because that's when you define your own rules. You're no longer playing someone else's game. You're playing your game. And so we can compare in style for inspiration and also to beat ourselves up. But really, the win is where we find our own style and we fall in love with that process, and we just work that every single day, right? The third way that we compare is by size of a bank account, size of a house, size of someone's impact, size of someone's social media following, and we associate the bigger the size, the better. And it's natural to want something bigger or want something more, but more is not always better. And so again, finding the size that fits your lifestyle is going to be your best bet. Not everybody wants to make $100 million. Not everyone should. I mean, it takes a different type of mindset, a different type of skill level, and it's going to require a different type of tenacity, and that's not for everybody, and you may be fine with six figures, and that is the lifestyle that you want because it allows you to have freedom here and there, and you're living on your terms. As long as you're conscious of your choice and it feels good, that is your size. And anyone who tries to shame you about that as it's not big enough, as long as you're growing, as long as you're feeling good within that area, then you're winning. You are winning. And other people that convince you that you're not winning are just projecting their own insecurity onto you. And you got to be mindful of that. You got to be able to sense that and block it. Because ultimately, the only person that you have to make happy is you. And if that means this job at this level with this amount of pay, with this amount of time is good, great. Find that, right? So if we want to compare effectively, we got to recognize when we're comparing up, laterally, or down. We got to find out which area we're comparing in, whether it's speed, size, or style. And then we got to understand, are we using this as a tool of inspiration to prove that it is possible, that there are different ways of doing something? Or are we using this comparison as a way to beat ourselves up and destroy the momentum that we're creating? And this framework has really helped me just kind of put labels to things and organize where my mind goes. And because the more organized you are, the easier it is to shift things around. And that's been really helpful for me. And I know it has been for my clients. So hopefully you can use this framework for you when you catch yourself comparing on social media or comparing yourself in social settings, like to remind yourself, like, you're playing your game. That's the only game that matters. Okay. The second framework I got was from this documentary called Stutz. And it's a new one on Netflix if you're looking to check it out. And this is a documentary that Jonah Hill created on his experience with working with his therapist and his psychiatrist, I believe. His last name is Stutz. I don't know his first name. I forget what it was. But during during the film, there was a portion where Stutz was talking about the three things. I don't know what he titled it, but the three things that life inevitably gives. Right? You can't get away from these three things. One of them is pain. 2 is uncertainty. And 3 is constant work. And when I heard that, immediately I was like, that's true. That, like, it rang true, right? So that was like my first instinct. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, that's interesting, because those are our best teachers. But oftentimes we avoid these things, right? We don't want to feel pain, so we seek pleasure. We don't want uncertainty, so we try and control everything, which we can't. We don't like doing the work, or it's not natural to do the work because it's effort, but everything you do is work. Work is just applied energy, effort towards something, right? There's work in your relationship. There's work as a parent. There's work at your job. There's work on you. There's work on your body. Everything you do is work. So you can't get away from it, right? And so that was like my second thought. Then the third thought was, okay, so if an individual can get better at navigating pain, meaning finding the meaning in pain, working through pain, and pain can come in many different forms. Pain can be the discipline to go to the gym. Pain can be having the hard conversation. Pain can be working through a breakup, right? There's many degrees of pain. But having the tools to navigate it rather than run away from it, then we gain the wisdom. And that wisdom helps us become better decision makers. It helps us become more resilient. It helps us tool up, like equip ourselves with more awareness so that we can avoid pitfalls and we can be of service to other people who may be going on the same path, right? We can get better at navigating uncertainty, recognizing that when we try and control our spouses, when we try and control our kids, when we try and control how other people need to be so that we feel better, that's not a winning strategy, right? Because and all that is fear trying to grasp onto something so that we can predict. And if you've ever tried and make a plan about what you're going to do, and then you realize that is not going to work, you very quickly understand this. And that's just like everything, right? I had a plan about how today was going to go, and then it's already different. So you can have a plan, just know that it's going to change. And that uncertainty, the more comfortable you can get in the uncertainty, that you could trust yourself to find whatever you'll need in that moment. That's the ultimate winning strategy. The resourcefulness, because life's going to throw you so many curveballs. One day, you're going to be on top of the world. The next day, something could totally change everything. Uncertainty. Yet, you, the person that you're constantly working on, the cultivating of you and the strength and the resilience that you build is going to help you navigate and weather that storm, right? And then the third thing, constant work, like finding meaning in the work that you do, finding purpose in the meaning that you do. And it doesn't need to be this global, beautiful, poetic statement. It could literally just be to put a smile on someone's face. It could be to progress every day. It could be to do the best that I can right now in this moment. When we add meaning to things, we engage more in the work. And if we could be more purposeful in our relationships, then the work we put into our relationships changes. If we could be more intentional about the spaces we enter, then different versions of ourselves emerge in those spaces, bringing about a different quality of experience. And if we can't get away from work, then we have to get better at doing work and thinking about work, right? Oftentimes work has such a negative connotation, but if we change our relationship to it by saying work is good, because work means we're getting better. Work means that we're progressing. Work means that we're evolving. Work means I'm learning. Work means I'm slowly unraveling more of who I am. Then it makes it, there's a curiosity there, and that curiosity is a sustainable thought process. It's a really good mindset to have. It keeps you moving forward rather than staying the same. And if we're constantly avoiding pain, if we're trying to avoid uncertainty, and we don't like doing the work, where that places us is in our comfort zone. And if you're trying to be good at anything, if you want to have a great relationship, you don't do it by being in a comfort zone. If you want to be great at the work you do, you don't do it by being in the comfort zone. If you want to make more money, you're not going to do it by being in your comfort zone, right? It's just, that's how it works. And so that framework was really helpful for me to understand, and it was super enlightening because of its simplicity, and the best things are super simple. They're not complicated. And so I hope that these two frameworks can offer greater levels of insight that you can apply today to your experience and to your workflows, to your relationships, to whatever you're going through right now. And I know they helped me, so I just wanted to share that with you guys. So once again, thank you for being a part of this community. Thank you for sharing these episodes. If this episode resonated with you, share it with somebody. Introduce them to the podcast. Would love that. Obviously, I don't do any marketing or promoting on this aside from just asking you to share this. I want more people to hear these types of messages, because there's a lot of people out there that need to have their fire stroked, right? Need to add some fuel to the flame so that become a wildfire, right? And if you could be the person in someone else's life to do that by sharing this with them, then that means your impact lives on. Your ripple grows bigger, right? So continue to be you, step out into the world, be intentional, live life on your terms, be your own 1%, and I will see you, hear you, talk to you on the next episode, all right? Much love, everybody.